Telling the truth's never been a strong point of the SNP, and here we go again.
Presiding Officer, Dr Hilary Cass, in her report, showed that social transitioning in schools does set some children on a pathway to irreversible medical interventions. Surely children being taught in schools that they're born in the wrong body are being failed in the duty of safeguarding which is owed to each of them.
Right, good questions from Fergus Ewing, SNP MSP, rebellious SNP MSP. Now, we talked about irreversible medical interventions as being a negative consequence of transgender indoctrination. Okay, fair enough. I would say, but that's only one negative consequence. Far more young people will be influenced by just the ideology and just trying to live as transgender, etc. The medical interventions are just a very small part of the harm done. But he says children are taught they're born in the wrong body. Now, it's a bit unfortunate because he didn't quite word that properly. He made it sound as if there's a lesson where a teacher points at a pupil and says, you were born in the wrong body. So he just hasn't quite worded that properly. What he should have said is children are taught that there's such a thing as being born in the wrong body, and therefore this might have happened to you. So he didn't quite word it properly. Anyway, we'll let him carry on.
Will the Minister, therefore, as numerous of my constituents have called for, withdraw the current guidance, remove all gender ideology references from the Relationship, Sexual Health and Parenthood resource, and finally remove third sector activist groups from schools?
Minister.
Right, good question. Let's hear the answer.
I thank Fergus Ewing for his question, and if I may just underline that my statement today is focused on NHS gender identity healthcare for young people. These are specialist services provided to a small number of young people who need their care. Children and young people are not taught about their own gender identity in schools. That is a personal matter for any individual, and in the case of young people, their family. However, it is the role of a school to provide pastoral support to a young person who is seeking it. Our education system must support everyone to reach their full potential, and it is vital the curriculum is as diverse as the young people who learn in our schools. It's also vital that we help instil the values of respect and tolerance in our children and young people.
Now, the Government Minister, Jenny Minto, here says children are not taught about their own gender identity. She's been disingenuous. She's taken advantage of the slight misphrasing of the question in order to answer it that way. No, they're not taught about their own gender identity, but they are taught that there's such a thing as changing gender identity. I'll read a couple of bits from the primary school lesson plans recommended by the government. If a person describes themselves as transgender, they feel that the sex they were born doesn't match how they feel inside. So a transgender woman lives as a woman today but was born a boy. A transgender man lives as a man today but was born a girl. So in other words, the teaching is that there's such a thing as being born in the wrong body. It doesn't quite use those words, but that is the teaching. So her answer is disingenuous. She tries to make it sound like, oh, no, we don't teach this concept in schools at all. Not true. It is taught. Then she talks about pastoral support. What do they mean by pastoral support? Well, if you look at the Scottish Government's guidance, what they mean by pastoral support is affirmation. In other words, saying to a young person, oh, that's great. We're delighted that you've realised that you're now actually a boy or actually a girl. How can we support you? What would you like us to call you? Would you like us to tell your mum and dad or not? Etc. That's what they mean by pastoral support. She says it's a decision for the family, but the Scottish Government's guidance makes it absolutely crystal clear that the family can be completely excluded from this whole process if that's what the child wants. She brings in diversity and respect. What does diversity mean? That means acceptance of transgender ideology. Respect, so what does that mean? That means affirming people who go down the transgender road. So the answers there are very disingenuous and deliberately avoiding what the question actually meant. Right, the Scottish Government issued a statement following up on this, and the Scottish Government said, the Supporting Transgender Young People in Schools guidance does not recommend pupils are encouraged to socially transition, and any claim otherwise is completely incorrect. Here we go again. disingenuity. Does not recommend pupils are encouraged to socially transition. Now, of course, the guidance doesn't say you should say to the children in your class, we think it would be a great idea if you change gender. Of course it doesn't say that, but it facilitates transition. So the message presented is some people change gender because they feel that their gender doesn't match their biological sex. So they change gender, that's a good thing to do, that's the right thing to do. If people do that, we've got to respect that. That's all part of the diversity that we celebrate. And it then goes on to say, if a pupil does that, then you're to affirm them and you're to accept that and to ask them basically how they would like that to be put into practice. So again, it's disingenuous. It's a bit like if someone said to you, did you score the first goal? And you said, I did not kick the ball into the net. And they say, oh, okay, well, maybe they didn't. But actually, you're thinking to yourself, I didn't kick it in, but I headed it in. I didn't lie, I told the truth. In other words, it's telling the truth in a way that's intended to give the opposite impression of the truth. So it's deceptive. It's deceptive. So Fergus Ewing, well done for asking the question. It's unfortunate you slightly misworded it, but still well done. The problem with Fergus Ewing, I would say my challenge to him would be he knows the harm that the SNP's policies are doing to children, and yet he still says support the SNP. You may say, does he really say this? Well, of course he does. He's an SNP MSP. So long as he wears the SNP badge, his message to the people of Scotland is keep supporting and voting for the SNP. In other words, keep supporting and voting for the party that's doing this harm to children in our schools. Probably his reasoning will go something along the lines of, oh, well, Scottish independence is what's most important. We've got to unify for that. And these are just minor fringe differences we happen to have. So Jenny Minto and the Scottish Government, dishonest, concealing the truth, not outright lies, but saying things that are deliberately deceptive. Now, the question's going to be, why do they do that? Why didn't they just come out and explain exactly what the policies are in schools, exactly what's taught? Well, the reason is they're embarrassed by them. Because they realise the amount of controversy that's stirred up. They would rather not have to defend their policies in public. They just want them to be carrying on and the mayhem being wreaked in young people's lives in schools. Scottish Family Party policy, of course, completely rejects transgender ideology. It should play no part in the operation of any agencies of the state. Repeal the 2004 Gender Recognition Act. There's no such thing as changing gender as far as we're concerned. And until that's established again across our society, these problems are going to continue. Right, do get your tickets for our annual conference, which is on the 9th of November. There is a link below. It would be great to see you. And thanks for watching.